PK alongside my co-host Phil for episode 293. For those of you watching on YouTube, we're still trying to get the intro going. If for some reason I'm not able to edit that intro, like first 20 seconds of us just trying to go, I'm fiddling with it. So if for some reason I can't cut that, you're just looking at having us look at the screen for 20 seconds, then I count in the intro again. But
I feel like it was potentially a bit loud again too. So we'll keep working on it.
We're fine tuning it. We're hearing the intro on a little behind the scenes. We're hearing the intro on our end, but when it goes time to edit it, the intro is no longer there for us to edit. It's a whole learning process. 5 episodes into this system, but Phil, it's the wedding season is upon us. I've already been through one. Your wedding is in about a month. We got a friend's wedding coming up this weekend. What is your game plan? Because it's going to be a very long day for us. We got to be there around like 3:30, and then there's an after party as well that goes until midnight. What is your plan to avoid my mistake from June and stay as hydrated as possible in the good way?
I mean, I don't think you had Mike at your wedding, the one you went to. So we do have a Boy Scout that'll be there. He's the captain of Hydration Stations, so I do think we'll be a little more prepared, but I never remember to drink water ever.
Same.
when we're doing these situations. I mean, when you're drinking, especially when it's like an open bar or something, you just want to keep drinking, and you don't really want to take that. I don't know. It seems like a wasted water break of just filling your body with liquid. I know it's not wasted; it's very important, which is why we often forget the step and then we regret it later. So it's a important step that is often missed because you just want to keep the good times and the good drinks rolling, and water just seems like a waste when, again, you're at like an open bar or something. You want to not really have that water break, but I think, yeah, it's important for sure. And I think it's going to be hot, I believe. So we're going to need water breaks. I don't know. I wonder if there's a true ratio of like 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. I'm sure it's supposed to be like 1-to-1 realistically, but maybe a 2-to-1 if I'm really like keeping track of everything would probably be a good way to go and be responsible and see how that goes, I guess.
Yeah, I think for the doctors it would be 0-to-1. But
that's true.
We're not medical professionals. We don't pretend to play one on TV. I did talk to our good buddy Mike. He has bought the electrolytes, so we are all set on Saturday. But I already told him.
Sneak in what are those? Oh my gosh, what is the little powder packet?
I know what you're talking about. I don't
the big
know
one.
What they're called though. Brooke takes them before she donates blood.
Yeah, I got a free sample of some of those. I think it's dragon fruit. I got them at work, unopened. So maybe I'll bring some of those for everybody and just dump it in the water, and we'll get that going with the electrolytes.
Yeah, I told Mike he's my babysitter for this weekend to make sure that the same situation does not occur with me. I think it's a smart way to do it. I don't know if Mike's the most trustworthy one to assign that job to, but we're going to find out. We're going to find out together. So congratulations.
At least this time you won't be scheduled to record the next day when you just completely vanish from the face of the earth.
I was gone for 24 hours. I might have. Nobody knew where I was. I didn't know where I was.
PK?
But yeah, huge congratulations to Cam and Cindy on their upcoming wedding on Saturday. Very happy for both of you and can't wait to celebrate with everybody there. So the other one is 4th of July is tomorrow. So hopefully everybody is celebrating in a safe and responsible manner. I will be hunkered down in the PK basement because 2 of the 3 dogs in our household hate fireworks. So I'll be blaring some TV down in the bunker and just counting down the hours until it's over. And then we released. I think we got it down to a science last year. So hopefully we'll just repeat it this year. But yeah, if you like to shoot off fireworks and let us know so we can hunt you down and yell at you. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Don't forget to follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. Check out our website at buffalosportscollective.com. You can check out our store on our link tree, on all our social media sites. It's in that tab in the description for all our social media sites, and at the top of the website by just hitting the shop tab. Can't be any easier. You can represent the BSC on the go. And for this episode, you can look for the time breakdowns in the description of the show. Phil, still got to do it. The 5th installment of the Mad Matty Minute every Wednesday, moving forward and continuing until we get word on Matt Vince and his plans. I'm going to be offering my services to try to convince Matt Vince to return as the goaltender for the Buffalo Bandits, trying to go for another three-peat. So far, I'm cleaning up after his animals, returning packages, getting food for him, and also being his water boy. This week, Phil, I know you got a bit of a garden going on in your house. We talked about this before. I have a couple, vegetable plants that I got going. I just harvested my first jalapeno peppers that I'm going to be partaking in over
very nice.
Weekend. I'm going to be his gardener. So if you want me to tend to the greenhouse, if you want me to pull weeds, if you want me to mow your lawn, whatever it involves with the landscaping and gardening of your home/vacation home, I will be your gardener boy, and I will take care of all of your greenery and shrubs around your home.
It's funny that you mentioned gardening. I was out last night when it was really nice weather. I did my lawn, and because our garbage day is Monday into Tuesday, so it's a good time to get the lawn done, and the weather was great. So I did all my edging, did my lawn, but then because it was a nice day, I stayed out there, pulled weeds all over the place, took care of all the gutter traps, and cleaned all those out. Did some gardening out there, and we did cancel, I guess you can say, our garden this year, other than we have 2 tomato plants that are going, but because of the wedding and everything, we just didn't want to deal with the extra garden. But we do have a new water lily little pond, tiny little thing in a giant pot. That's been pretty cool, and water lilies are pretty interesting. So right now there's like 5 or 6 lily pads that sprouted, which are fun to watch. And if you've ever seen lily pads have water on them, it just beads up because it resists them, and it's pretty fun to do that. So yesterday when I was watering things, I poured some water on the lily pads and just watched it bead up a little bit because it's a good time. But yeah, the lawn. Do you remember when my lawn got torn up years ago now?
Because there was like a gas leak under your house because your grass kept dying. Yeah.
And they did it twice. So obviously what they come back with for free is not very good. The like blue whatever that is. So that's been really, really bad weeds for a while now. But I sprayed twice this season, like liquid weed and feed. So it's like a weed killer, but fertilizer, and it connects to your hose. I did that twice, and it did a really good job. I think this is the best the lawn's looked since that time. So that's exciting, and that's where I'm at with my lawn.
Okay, I'm noting that down now in case Mad Vince runs into the same problem that Phil
if he would the weed, even those little like the white and yellow flowers that are all over people's lawns, it like knocked those out in less than a week, and it was amazing. I was like, hey, look at that, look at it go. And I had some really big, nasty weeds. That was the huge patch of the nonsense that they put in there, whatever they dump on your yard. And that after 2 treatments pretty much knocked all that out. So fantastic, would recommend.
Okay, 3 or 5 stars from Phil. Yes. Recommending.
Connect to a hose, no grass seed or anything. Just water it, boom, done. Amazing.
Easy and efficient. I absolutely love it. I think I should have also covered this one. That ends the 5th installment of Mad Matty Minute. Once again, hopefully don't have to do this anymore because I really don't want to update that graphic there with Shanahan, and that's me, and that's Matt Vince. If you're watching on YouTube, I don't want to have producer Pat make a new graphic and have Orlum in there. So hopefully, just sign this. We'll shoot off fireworks for you if you sign. But yeah, I should have covered this beforehand. Apple now has transcripts of this show, so I know there were a few people out there that have been wondering, hey, is there going to be a way to kind of read this and kind of skip through and just hit on the spots that we'd rather just read about? Because there are people that would rather just consume this in many different ways. We did sign up for it. Apple finally released it, so you just got to go to the Apple app and just read it there on the episodes. It's got a whole list of everything. So what I'm saying right now, you're going to be able to read in your own voice. So if you don't want to hear me talk, which I don't know why people still do, but thank you for listening. Yeah, you can just read about it. So I'll try to plug that on the shows moving forward, since that's a new feature that technically we offer, but Apple offers for us. But let's dive into the Buffalo Bandits, sort of. League report cards continue. We got 2 full weeks more of this, and then we'll cover the Buffalo Bandits themselves. But for those of you that are just catching on, because this is the 3rd installment of it, we cover 3 teams on each show. We talk about them, what their team looks like, what last year looked like, any impeding free agents that might be out there. And to tie in the Buffalo Bandits, any players from that team that the Buffalo Bandits could possibly be interested in, even with their, crowded roster. That's what we've been covering a lot. So to start off, I'll do the big wrap up here. We understand that the Buffalo Bandits are in a position right now where they haven't made any moves besides releasing Delvin Shanahan. Their roster is massively overflowing with talent, so there's not much room.
Loaded.
We're waiting on Matt Vince, we're waiting on Buchanan, Priolo, so on and so forth, of players that are possibly at the point in their careers where they might retire. So a lot of these moves might be with us assuming, hey, if these guys retire, this is the next move. Hey, if they make a trade here, this is the next move. So a lot of these decisions that we're thinking of here affect and that's our thought process. So if you're just seeing the logo of, hey, we're bringing in, I'm going to mention his name again, Phil, Zach Higgins here, it's because we're going on the assumption, hey, this is if Matt Vince retires. So that's the big, warning message now, so we don't have to cover it each time. But let's start with the Halifax Thunderbirds. 10-8 last season, 12.67 goals for, second in the league, 11.11 goals against, which was 6th in the league. They own the 10th overall pick in the September draft that is actually coming up quickly. We're already into July. They re-signed Dawson Theed this offseason. He was an RFA to a 3-year deal. Phil, their offense was not a main problem last year until the playoffs, but it's another season of high expectations going into the season, and to me, another failed season. We both had them in our top 3, possibly top 4. I can't remember where I had them. I think I had them 4th. But this is another season of running it back that just absolutely failed for them, and they failed once again to get out of the first round.
Sorry, I'm looking through your UFA. So I lost him already. There you are. So Jameson's still locked in for a little bit. But, yeah, I mean, the offense definitely was not the issue. Peterson had a pretty big leap forward from 84 points to 104, which is pretty fantastic. Randy Stotts only played 9 games, which he did really well in those 9 games, but overall might have hurt them and as a UFA, but he did well. They're going to want him back if possible. Shanks took a pretty big step forward as well. Jameson and Benesh. Benesh is obviously the huge question mark here heading into a UFA. Jameson did really well. Actually, wait.
I think he took a step back. He's still got 2 years.
I don't know why.
I think Jameson is also a player, though, even though he has 2 years left on his deal, because of his age, he's 37, it might be another conversation. Does he want to continue to keep playing as well?
Yeah, he went from 73 to 63, so he was okay. Little step back. I was thinking of someone else that I think we're going to talk about later that took a massive step back. So not terrible, but again, like you just said, at that age, 37 years old, if you're taking a step back, are you going to be able to recapture it, or is that where you're headed and you keep going backwards? I mean, obviously, still 63 points isn't bad, but their offense was fine. At the same time, Benesh, if he leaves, that's a huge gap on that team. 81 points is a massive hole to fill. And same with Jameson. I mean, he's taking slow steps backwards at his age. If he does continue, what are you really getting out of him? I think Theed was a great replacement for Bushi. He did a pretty much, I think they were the exact same amount of points 1 year apart. So I think Theed had 58 this year. Bushi had 58 last year. So great 1-for-1 replacement there. Their defense was solid again. Tarasenko and Armstrong took nice steps forward. Hasek did take a pretty big step back, but he's still one of the best in the league. He's not going anywhere. And went from 39 caused turnovers, which is insane, to 27, which is still elite. So even, I mean, we talked about somebody else earlier that took a step back, but a step back for a player like that is still better than 90% of players in the league. So it's not really an issue. The big thing for me with this team, I've said it all right along. I don't think you agree with me, but I don't know. And it wasn't the problem in playoffs for sure. But to me, I don't know if Warren Hill is still it. I think he's streaky at times. I think he does play really well in certain games. And then he'll have a game where it's just a little bit rough, which is what a lot of goalies do in this league. I definitely don't think he's bad. And I don't think he's not an answer. I just don't know if he's one of the elites that push them really into where they need to be. But in general, honestly, I don't understand what happened to this team in playoffs. I think that is the biggest question mark with this team. I mean, obviously, Banesh and Jameson are your two big question marks, but for me, I don't know what happened. They had the team to do it. They had the defense. They had the offense. Goaltending wasn't the issue in playoffs. He did really well in that one game, but 3 goals from an offense that was number 2 in the entire league. I know Albany was a good team, obviously. They made it all the way to the finals, but, I mean, even the Bandits, you know, they were number 1, but still they had their moments of disappearing like they always do. But, I mean, the Bandits were able to figure out Albany in their 2 games, whereas Halifax, a very good team, very good offense, 3 goals. I don't understand how you put up that kind of performance in a situation like that. Just, I don't know how Albany got to them as much as they did. I understand Albany winning, but closer to like 9-7, 9-6, 3 goals is just, I don't know where the offense went in playoffs.
Yeah, we kind of already talked about this team a lot as one of the ones that we thought regressed and did not meet expectations. Them, San Diego, and Toronto, I think, were all the 3 teams that we mentioned right after the season started back in May, I believe it was, when we were still having 2 shows a week. But they got Ryan Benesh, who's a UFA. They got Austin Shanks, who's a UFA, and Randy Stotts, who's a UFA. You can't franchise tag, or you can, but he has right to refuse it, Ryan Benesh, and his future still. He pretty much said, I'm going to run it back one more year last year. But, you know, those numbers are insane. What he's doing at his age, he can keep playing for as long as he wants. It's kind of up to him. I know he's got a young family growing now, so it kind of depends on what he wants. You can really only tag one player, Shanks or Stotts. It's who would you rather come back, and then you try to negotiate with the other player. So, and, you know, that deadline's coming up quick. August 1st, I believe, is going to be free agency starting again. You never hear when it is. They never announce anything like that, but it's usually August 1st is when it kicks in. And this is a team that we talked about where they're going to have to go through a major culture change here, and a big change, a retooling, if you want, that just hasn't happened yet. There's been a lot of teams that have been making moves, and the only move that this team has brought, which I really liked, was re-signing Dawson Thede to a 3-year deal. He was, before they did that was one of the names that I was like, oh man. And you know my love for Dawson Thede. He's a big boy that, you know, he should not be able to move the way he does for his size. But right. I love that move, but you got to change something up. It's the definition of an insanity, expecting different results by doing the exact same thing. And I don't believe Warren Hill was the main reason. I do agree that he might not be that goalie that can get you over the hump. But when you score 3 goals in the playoffs, what do you expect to do? This is an offense that's looking for a different identity. Maybe, you know, Micah Kersey's, you know, message has gone stale. I don't know, but I think they would have made that change by now if they were going to make a change at the head coaching position. But, you know, it's definitely a team that I think will be in contention for the playoffs once again. I don't think their offense is going away. Even if you do lose a Stotts or a Shanks, you got a young Aaron, not even young, he was a rookie at 29 years old, but he stepped up pretty well in 11 games, 32 points, 14 goals. But yeah, it's definitely a team that should be retooling that hasn't been yet. But we gave him a B-. I think that's a little generous. I think finishing 6th, you can't really get lower than a B-, but another failed playoff, it's not ideal for a team that had such high goals and such high expectations going into the season.
Yeah, and Warren Hill for that playoff game, just to give him a positive shout out, because again, it was not his fault. He had a 87 save percentage and only allowed 7 goals in that game. So absolutely not the reason they lost. Obviously, the 3 goals in general, that's why you lost. But sometimes you can lose with bad offense and bad goaltending and bad defense. But he was doing everything he could to keep that team in it as long as he could, and the offense just did not click ever throughout that game, which, again, insane for a number 2 offense in the entire league. I don't get how Albany had their number that badly, but definitely need something. I mean, they got a lot of big UFAs that could change their entire team, and like you said, they're high point getters, but maybe those kind of changes are what need to start happening with these teams. I mean, it's hard in a league like this to let any of these really good players kind of walk and try to make that kind of change because, yes, there's a lot of talent, but as we've seen, it doesn't move all that often. So a lot of times you want to keep as many of these talented players on your team as possible because replacing them is not usually that easy. But this is a team that's run it back a few times now with really high expectations and gotten absolutely nowhere. So maybe it's time to mix up something.
Yeah, so this is a team that I'm looking at it. Would I love a guy like Ryan Tarafanko? 100%. 26 years old, still 3 years left. He's the perfect type of transition player that the Buffalo Bandits would crave. Graham Hossack, unbelievable. Jake Withers. Jake Withers is the perfect example of what this show wants in a face-off man that can play defensive shifts and unbelievable defensive shifts. Is he a hothead? 100%. And I know you're one that's looking into, hey, is he really one of my favorite players because of all the shenanigans he does after the whistle? But
too many.
Yeah, too many. But I don't think any of those 3 are leaving. I think they're all pillars. You got a Tyson Bell as well. No, not going anywhere. The player that I'm looking at, and again, we've already did the disclaimer, so I'm not even going to go there. Trevor Smith, 29 years old, 1 year left in his deal, 2-1-3 on the year, 53 loose balls, 16 caused turnovers, 11 block shots. He could be one of those pieces that if you're losing, if you want to consolidate some of the pieces, if you want to move out a Justin Robinson and a Sam LaRue in the same type of deal and kind of change up what Halifax is doing, he could be a type of player that you bring in, and whether he can step up and be one of those, last men on the bench or one of those healthy scratches going into the week, I think that could be one of those pieces because this is a team that's so stacked. You're kind of just looking to fix the bottom of the roster and try to improve as you do as much as you can. Like you've mentioned on many shows, you're trying to upgrade the Sam LaRue's and Justin Robinson positions, and I think a Trevor Smith like that, you can consolidate and get a type of player like him. I think he would do well in an environment like the Buffalo Bandits.
Yeah, and don't forget that, I mean, we talk about it also every show, but there's a week in between each show, so too many draft picks for the Buffalo Bandits. 4 very high draft picks. They need to go somewhere. Trades, hopefully, will be the route they go. They can also continue to draft players and kick this problem way down the line, which we also kind of expect. But they do have a lot of draft picks. I mean, Halifax isn't necessarily, or any of the teams we talk about coming up aren't necessarily rebuilding teams, but teams still love draft picks, especially really high ones. So the Bandits do have a lot of ammo to go after a player like Trevor Smith, who isn't at the very top of their lineup, but they have enough ammo in trades to just throw a couple picks at them and get a player like that.
And as we saw last year, injuries happen, especially even in summer ball too. Some of these players might be nicked up when they're coming into camp and might not be able to start the season. So having a deep defensive pool doesn't hurt whatsoever. So if you got to spend an early second on a guy like Trevor Smith, doesn't hurt in the long run. But Phil, before we dive into the Georgia Swarm, let's dive into our first sponsor of the show and our first sponsor ever, Tap That Tap Room.
I was getting oh my gosh, there's so many notes to scroll through. Tap That Tap Room is at 363 Delaware Street in Tonawanda, New York. They are Buffalo's first women-owned self-pour bar. We have not explained in a few episodes what a self-pour bar is, so let's go over that quickly. What it is, you go in, you preload one of their cards, and you go up to any of their 30 consistently rotating taps of beer, cider, sour seltzers, or malt beverages. You try as little or as much as you want of each one, and it's a great way to try a ton of different beers, or if you find, the very first one you try that you really thought would look good was amazing, just keep going back to it and have a great time. It's a really cool way, pretty unique way of going out there, trying different things, and just it's a different kind of social environment. Really awesome place.
Yeah, it's my favorite type of bar at this point. I instead of just waiting on a bartender, you kind of go and do it yourself. But not only do they have that amazing setup, they have tons of events going on, and we're going to rattle through it because, one show a week, we got to rattle through what's going on this coming week. So Wednesday, Geeks Who Drink Trivia, 7:30. That's a tradition there now, as is Thursday karaoke starting from 7 to 11. July 4th, you can bring in the Independence Day by singing your little heart out on the mic. Friday, Friday the 5th. I've got the 4th here. It's Friday the 5th. Live music with Tommy at 7. Saturday, more live music. So live music all through the weekend. Marty Milbrand music at 7 p.m. And then Sunday, don't forget the Summer Sundays, 10% off all taps from 3 to 6. If any of these interest you or you want to see what else is planned for their events, you can check out their Facebook page or see what's on tap and what's on deck at tapthattaproom.com. Georgia Swarm, Phil, as I scroll back up through the notes, finished 5th overall, and they had a road game they had a home game up until the final week of the season, and they finished 5th, 10-8. 11 goals for, tied for 11th in the NLL, 10.95 goals against, which was 5th. They already signed a bunch of draft picks from last year. They signed their 26th overall pick last year. They signed their 56th, and then they re-signed their 19th overall pick from 2023. Missed all of last year to a 2-year deal for all of those. They hold the 3rd overall pick from Philly. They hold the 9th overall pick from Panther City, and they hold their 11th overall pick from themselves. This is a team that took that step forward and continued their hot stretch from the end of 2 seasons ago, brought it to this season. You saw a guy like Brett Dobson step up. You saw the offense that was very consistent with Lyle Thompson, Andrew Q, and Jackson, but it wasn't consistent enough. They didn't have that 100-point guy, but they had 3 guys in the 80s. So it's kind of like Georgia, what is that next step? They're retooling with, all the picks that they had last year. They still got to sign their 6th overall pick from last year. So they could have, 5 players coming in that were drafted in the last 2 years in the top 20, which is just unheard of.
Yeah, before I go into this team, big shout out to PK. As we have both mentioned the insane amount of notes we are scrolling through. PK does an incredible job with the notes every single week. I know now we have a week in between, but most times we do not have much time in between, and PK does insane notes. It's very impressive, and I do greatly appreciate what he does over there. But
it does help when I don't start from ground zero and I just tinker with it. So it helps not starting from ground zero every offseason anymore, and I've kind of learned in the 3 years of just updating as you go. So it's a lot easier than it makes it look.
Georgia Swarm, yeah, my biggest issue with them, to me, and we'll talk about them later, but they remind me a lot of the Sabres, right? 1 year had a lot going for them. Their offense was really, really hot, and then the next year it all just collapsed, and that kind of reminds me of what this team was. Their record got better, the team got better, their offense went way backwards, and I don't know what happened. They had the same pieces. Thompson and Q went from exactly 106 points each to exactly 87 points each. That's a pretty big drop-off. Jackson went from 93 to 83. Bomberry, 63 to 50. The entire offense was still there. Still all the pieces you're looking for. All of them took a step back. It's very strange to see an offense. I don't know if they just became very defensive-minded because their defense did get much better. Their goaltending is just incredible. Love it. But for the entire offense to kind of just go backwards as a group, not good, but also kind of strange. So I don't know if there was a philosophical change on the team to focus more on the defense and play just a more defensive style, win those close games. I mean, it worked pretty well. They went 10-8. They made playoffs. So overall, it kind of worked. They almost beat the Bandits. They did beat the Bandits once, almost beat them in playoffs, took them to overtime. So it's not a bad system, but if their offense, with those same players can get back to where they were, at least closer, I think this team's going to be that much scarier moving forward. And then Seth Oakes did take a very nice step forward. He had 33 points in 13 games, and he jumped to 57 points in 18 games. So he was the only one who really kind of stepped up for their offense. Everyone else took a step back. Their defense was really, really good. Liam Burns, who I believe was added, and McIntosh, They both did really well, and then Wiedemann, Camizio stayed very good as they were, and then goaltending, I absolutely love Dobson. He's young, he's incredible, he's going to lead this team to many, many great places. So to me, all this team really needs to do is find that offensive touch again. Like you said, they're bringing in a lot of young players, which is great for this kind of team. But if their offense can just get back to where they were 2 years ago and kind of remain the same with everything else, they're going to be even scarier. And even though their offense took a step back, they are still on the right path, headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I remember last offseason, it was the talk of Lyle Thompson, Shane Jackson, and Brian Cole were all UFAs. And it was, hey, are they going to be able to bring all three of these guys back? And they brought all three of them back on 3-year deals. So they were in it for the long haul. And like you said perfectly, I think Lyle Thompson had a solid year. But for him, it was a down year. For Andrew Q, what you expect from him, being 26 years old, one of these young guys on this offense, it was a down year. Shane Jackson, it was a down year. They had very consistent seasons, all like 87, 87, and 83 points.
Right.
But it wasn't good enough for this offense. Tied for 11th in the league in scoring is not good enough. Being a team that has to rely on low-scoring games to win, it can only get you so far. Yes, you're going to win enough games to make the playoffs, especially with a goaltender like Brett Dobson, who can steal you games, and we saw that in the first matchup with Buffalo. He absolutely robbed Buffalo in that one and stole that win for him. But you're not going to win playoff games, with this type of style. I know when playoff comes around, a lot of people say unless you have a great goaltender and good defense, you're not going to win the championship, and that's true. But you need the offense to back that up. We've seen that in the past with Buffalo these last 2 years. That offense just goes nuts in the playoffs at times, and you need that ability. And it just doesn't seem like Georgia has that ability to pull it out of them. And are there free agents when we get a bit closer that might be looking to a team like Georgia that's looking for that next step? Last year, they just missed the playoffs after going on that 7 or 8 or 9 start to the season. They got hot. And then, Brett Dobson played really well. This season, 10-8. Are they ready to take that next step? They have a lot of draft picks, a lot of ammo. Will they use all those, or will they go use some of those pieces to go add another player? And the last bit here is Seth Oakes, man. We were questioning in the playoffs, why was he a scratch? Did he come up with an injury or pull something in warm-ups? That's my only thought. But you sat your fourth leading scorer on this team, and you lost 10-9. It was a very confusing decision. We gave him a B+, but I think this team, you said it perfectly, they need to add a bit more offense, or just hope that Lyle, Q, and Jackson kind of bounce back to what they were 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I am happy that they sat Seth Oakes. We appreciate it as Bandits fans because who knows if he was in the lineup, if it would have changed the outcome of that game. It's very possible. Like you said, fourth leading scorer and you pull him. Not sure what happened. I got to assume injury. I don't know why you would take someone like that out, especially knowing that your offense is struggling all season long. I would assume you would want as much firepower as you could have, but we'll assume injury and hope it wasn't just a random weird coaching decision.
Yeah, so this is another team that it's more difficult to pick pieces off of these teams because they were playoff teams, and you're kind of looking to add that next piece to take that next step and go to the finals or advance in the next round and so on and so forth. So this now that we're talking about playoff teams, it's a bit tougher. So I went the Fried route here. I think this is a guy that could be a replacement for a Paul Dawson. We've already said this before. See 15 minutes ago of the whole speech that we gave. But John Rannigan, he's 31 years old. He is a UFA. 2 assists, but 34 loose balls, 17 caused turnovers, and the big one here, 23 block shots. If Paul Dawson decides to hang it up, or for some reason decides to go play in Rochester or somewhere else, the 23 block shots are an indication that, will you be losing a veteran leadership like a Paul Dawson? 100%. But can John Rannigan come in and take that role? I think based on these stats and what I saw in those games, he can be that piece that steps in on that penalty kill in front of the net and block those shots and kind of be that example of, hey, I'm taking one for the team. why don't you do that as well? Because we saw what happened when Paul Dawson came in and started changing the philosophy on defense to give up the body to make those blocks. That I think he finished second or third in the entire league when NLL did that breakdown last week. But 23 block shots is a huge, massive number in the NLL.
Yeah, he's also 6'3", 218, so another one of those bigger defenseman guys that the Bandits seem to love quite a bit right now. And he is from New York, so that geography does play into it. So wouldn't be a terrible move for him. And I do like it, especially like you said, if Dawson kind of takes off. I think those block shots are very important to the identity that the Bandits have now kind of become, especially with Dawson, the way he changed that in Buffalo. I think that's going to be another one of their identities moving forward. Like, they're always that physical team, they're that nasty team, that kind of grinded out team. But I think with the block shots they had and how big of a deal everybody was making the block shot numbers, because they were extremely impressive and led to a championship. So I do think that's going to be another part of the identity, especially seeing that Dawson was able to teach a lot of those younger guys like a Wires kind of the art of getting hit in the face with a ball, and being willing to take it for your team multiple times in a game. I do think that, instilling that in the younger players, the next generation of the Bandits, I think that's going to be huge. I think it's going to become kind of an interesting stat, I think, to watch next year if the Bandits continue to be that dominant in block shots. I think it's going to be kind of a weird stat to follow, but I assume and kind of think they will be number one in block shots again next year throughout this season.
Well, Phil, get to scrolling, because before we dive into the San Diego matchup or team breakdown of the report cards here in the classroom, let's dive into our second sponsor of the show, Mr. Sizzles.
Mr. Sizzles is at 346 Connecticut Street in Buffalo, New York. I was there the other day before the Buffalo Bisons Bandits crossover fun time game. Great weather for that game. We accidentally sat next to each other. I had no idea where you were sitting, and got tickets in the exact same section as you did, but went to Mr. Sizzles for dinner beforehand. Ashley had the vegan Impossible Burger, and she loved it. I had the first time I went, I had the chicken Dane Smith chicken sandwich, so I did not have a burger, which they are known for. So this time I think I went with the Piggy Smalls, just straight up bacon cheeseburger deliciousness. It was amazing, as anticipated. And I also got the nuggets, because everyone keeps talking about how great the nuggets are. And if you want your like run-of-the-mill kind of chicken nugget, that is not what it is. It is like a high-end, very fancy, delicious, gourmet chicken nugget, homemade. Loved it. Loved the few sauces I got. Really great experience, and excited to go back again. I was happy to make it back out there again, and excited to go back in the future.
Yeah, I was telling you, I'm glad that we converted you to the Mr. Sizzles life. It's
me too.
Delicious.
Me too.
But we did see on the social medias the drywall's going up in Hamburg, so out there in Hamburg, it fits perfectly since they're known for their burgers. But Phil, you and Ashley gave what you guys had there. I'm gonna celebrate my own pairing here. I'm going with a double. It's 2 burger patties with American cheese, OG sauce, onions, and pickles. Yes, it can be made vegan for those that choose the plant life. I'm going to get a side of the sloppy cow fries, which has chili, cheese sauce, and fries. And I'm going to put it all down with the 9 Pine seasonal cider. I'm a big cider guy. Phil, what did you think of my pairing? How did it stack up to yours?
I think it's 9 Pin first
9
off.
Pin, yes. I apologize. Yes, 9 Pin.
I only know because I believe that is my fiance's favorite beer. They are from Albany, actually. We went and drove there for one of her birthdays and checked it out. But anyway, it was great combination there. I feel like the sloppy cow is a little bit more winter for me with the chili. But it's also good year round. I mean, chili's just fan. I mean, chili hot dogs are a big thing, so that's a big summer thing. So I'll give it to you. Overall, great pairing, and I do want to try those chili cheese sauce and fries at some point, because that sounds amazing.
Well, if you like this pairing or the pairing that Phil and Ashley had tell the great workers at the counter that the BS sent you, or you can go there and just create your own pairing by checking out their website on their social media sites or at MrSizzles.com. Let's dive into our final.
Before we leave, I did want to credit you again. I did use your hack to order it to go ahead of time, and then picked it up when I got there. So it was well played. It was finished, like, I think as we were parking, it said it was ready, so it was pretty much perfect timing. Then we went and sat out on their nice patio because it was a nice day out, and sat out on the patio and had a good time. But it's a great hack, and took full advantage of it. So thank you for that.
You got to stop complimenting me. It's going to my head.
Sorry.
You got to bring me down.
You're the worst.
Yeah, thank you. I need good balance in my life. If I get too high,
Brooke will handle that other side for you.
That's very true. I'm probably going to get yelled at or beaten up, or I'm just kidding. I feel safe in my own home. But here we go. Let's the fourth for those that watch YouTube. That was a good moment. We might have to clip that and put it in a reel. Don't tell Brooke I said that. Okay, fourth team. Here, fourth place, San Diego Seals here. Yes, they finished in second place, but guess what? They finished in fourth because of playoffs, because they couldn't get out of the second round. 13-5 season, 11.67 goals for, which was fifth in the league, 9.89 goals against, second overall. They hold their 12th overall pick because, yes, you might have had a good season, but regular season only gets you so far. Playoffs, it does affect playoff or pick seeding. 12th overall. They signed their 13th overall pick last year, Matthew Wright, defender, to a one-year deal just the other day, so they're starting to lock that down. But the biggest talk here is they fixed their defense. They got in a stud in net in Irregolari. 9.79 goals against, 79 save percentage. We already know, and stupid me for bringing up, hey, if this team struggles, it's because of what's happening in net. They're struggling because their offense, similar to Georgia, cannot remain consistent. Yes, they finished fifth in the league, but 11.67 is not going to get you. You need to be in that 12 range, which Toronto's in, which Buffalo's in, so on and so forth. I know Halifax, but they struggle in the playoffs. But this is a team that is on the older side. They have some younger pieces, but the main core of this team is on the older side, and they're going through kind of an identity crisis as well. They went all in this season, making some massive trades, bringing in a guy like Chris Wardle, bringing out of retirement both Brody Merrill and Mike Poulin. It's a team that's definitely going to have some question marks moving forward on what is the plan moving forward. With Pat Merrill behind the bench as head coach and GM, this is a team that's definitely struggling to reach their end goals, which is a title.
Yeah, this team, Berg, I assume, will stay there one way or another, so he's pretty much locked in. He stayed consistent from what he did. Dane Dobbie was the one that I was thinking of earlier because I had just finished typing up the notes. He took a gigantic step back, and he is a UFA. He's 38. Who knows if he will come back, but he went from 101 points to 70. That is a monster drop-off. 30 points is huge. That's not 10 points. That's not 5. That is a big step back for an aging player. That's another one of those situations where, is this his time? Is he just simply not going to be able to get back? A 101-point season is fantastic. So, again, it's a great player going from really great to just pretty good. 70 points is still an incredible season, so it's not that he was trash by any means. He's still very important to this team, but if he takes that kind of step back, is that just his new ceiling is 70? Like, where does a player like that go, and can this team handle the drop-off of a player like that? Same with Curtis Dixon. He only played in 13 games, 64 points. Last year, he also had 100 points in 18 games, so he played less games and also 40-point drop-off because of that. Those are two huge dropbacks for their offense, and it's great that Stotts stepped up. He went from 75 and 16 to 102 and 18, so he took a huge step forward. So moving forward, it looks like Stotts will be able to take over for Dane Dobbie. Like, that is kind of the one-for-one switch of a young player, an old player, and Austin Stotts was stepping up at the right time, but he also has a suspension looming. So what does this team look like? Curtis Dixon, yes, he has 1 year left, but he's 36. Who knows what he has left in the tank? If Dobbie does not return, what does this offense look like without Stotts, without Dobbie to possibly start the season? They need help on offense pretty quickly if these players move on or just continue just not being able to really step up. And then their defense, Baptiste, is beyond ridiculous in the faceoff. Again, he had a really, really good season. Rubish, I absolutely love. He had an incredible season. Sad to see him on a different team. Danny Logan, I thought, took a big step back in a weird way, and Trey LeClaire was the other one, but he is not there right now. So Logan, though, I believe it was his sophomore season. In his rookie season, he had 18 games and, 24 caused turnovers in 17 games. And then in just the 10 games he played, he had 8 caused turnovers. So sophomore season, I don't know what happened to him. That's a pretty big step back. He went from like the number 2 defender on the team to playing in only 10 games. So weird for a sophomore to kind of take that drop. But other than that, their defense stayed pretty steady, and then their goaltending is just, again, ridiculous. So a few teams now that we've seen in a row have that goaltender that we absolutely love, the staple of the team, the backbone of the team. So, again, to me, no matter what an offense or defense can do, if you have a goalie like this, if you have a goalie like Vince, if you have, Nick Rose in net, your team will always be competitive, but this team needs to fix some things if they want to really take it to that next step, because Origlieri played incredible the entire season, and it meant nothing to their playoff run. So clearly, they're still missing some things.
Yeah, like we mentioned, they have some younger pieces. Trey Claire is only 26 years old, first time full-time on offense, 23, 36, and 59.
That would explain his step back in defense.
Yes. But, Austin Stotts, he's got hopefully a big suspension coming, not just for, the league's sake, but I think for league integrity's sake, that it should be a lengthy suspension. Westberg, he's not going anywhere. He's probably going to be franchised if they can't work out a longer term deal. But you guys, this league is slowly aging out some of these Hall of Fame type
legends.
Players. You got Callum Crawford, who's over 40. You got Ryan Benesh, Cody Jamieson. Just on this team, Dan Doby and Curtis Dixon are up there in age as well. So it's a changing of the guard for a lot of these teams in here. The biggest thing that hurt this team, really, in my opinion, is Mac O'Keefe. He was on the holdout, and he did not play very much this season. And when he did, he got hurt. 4 games, 4-1-5. And I think a lot of that has to do with the PLL and his commitment there. But like you mentioned, this team needs to find that offense. They need to find another piece there and remain more consistent, because there were too many times where this talented offense just disappeared in the regular season. So, we gave him a B+. I think we probably could have given him a B-, but a 13-5 season can't really knock them too much. I know they came up short in the playoffs, but against Albany, which a lot of teams ended up doing. But I think when you're looking at a team like this, who you might try to pick off of, again, it's a talent. It's a team that lost, a total of 7 games, including playoffs last year. That's not that bad. They're a team that I think thinks they're right on the edge if they just add a few more pieces here. Is a guy like Chris Wardell, who came over from Colorado. Yes, he's more of a West Coast type of player, but if you lose a guy like Kyle Buchanan, Chris Wardell can be that type of player, but on the left side. So will you have to change up your offense a little bit? Yes. Yeah, that means you're probably going to be rolling with Dane Smith, Chase Frazier, and Tehoka Nanakok are going to be playing a few extra shifts, which isn't that bad of an idea. But it's more of he's going to be that water bug for the forwards, but coming from the lefties at this point. So that would be my pick. I got 3 signings rather than trades for, which kind of makes sense because, playoff teams, they're not really going to be looking to trade a valuable piece from their team to a team that they're competing for a championship with.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. I think as we get higher in ranks and teams, it becomes increasingly more difficult to choose players to pick off, even in free agency from a team like this. I mean, Wardle, I think, could help, but he's not bad, but I mean, Buchanan is a one of one. Yes. I think we both believe in this league. So, I mean, he would definitely be a big step down, and that's not necessarily coming at you for your pick. It's just harder to pick off players from teams like this. So, definitely of their options, I think he would be the best one, but not necessarily a great option for the Bandits, but definitely the best that San Diego could possibly have to offer.
Yeah, I think they need to take a lesson out of Paul Dawson's book. Just looking at some of these stats, block a couple more shots, guys. That might also help you on defense, even though we're hammering the offense. But on the next show, we got two teams, Toronto and Albany. This will be a fun breakdown because there's only two teams that are going to be stepping in the classroom to get their grades. But we'll finish up with the Bandits in 2 weeks. So if you've been sticking with us, stay with us. There's 2 more report cards to hand out before we hand out the report card for the Buffalo Bandits. I wonder what their grade could be, Phil. But let's dive into our final segment here. This might be the longest we've talked about the Sabres in a year. Let's talk about the moves even before Friday happened, because we'll talk about the draft and then free agency. There's a lot to cover with this one, and we'll try to fly through it, and I got a lot to say, so I'll try. But the draft was Friday and Saturday. They re-signed Kyle Clagg to a 1-year deal. He was an RFA. You know, they tendered Krebs, Malliston, who we'll talk about in a second, Yoki Haru, and UPL. They did not tender Bryson Stillman and Salin. I believe he was a trade. I can't remember. I think he was from the Eric Johnson deal. He went over and signed overseas. They bought out Jeff Skinner. We already know that whole cap situation. They traded pick 11 to San Jose for 14 and 42. They traded 76 for 61 and they traded 76 and 161 to Colorado for 71, so they moved up. And then they traded 109 to move down and gather more picks for 123 and 219. But then they traded 43. Their second of the second-round picks for Beck Malliston, who is a fourth liner. He is an RFA, 26 years old, 21 points in 81 games last year, but 93 block shots. Phil, at first I was looking at this deal, and then we can talk about the other deals and whatever else we want to talk about before we dive into the draft picks. But I was a bit skeptical on this one because it felt like, hey, it's another Jordan Greenway, and then I dove into the numbers, and I think this is exactly the type of player you want playing on a fourth line to make your team tougher to play against, and he's a guy that you want in your locker room that isn't going to let the kind of stuff that happened last year that Kyle Poso and Zemgus Girgensson let the team get away with, because they flat out said they let him get away with. I think this is the type of player that you want to bring into an organization that has been struggling for 13 straight years.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be so difficult to talk about overall, but his hitting is incredible. His block shots are incredible. Like, what he brings to the Sabres is exactly what you're looking for a player like this. Like you said, like, when he first came on, honestly, I didn't see him. I mean, I read some things immediately about him and what he brought, so I didn't necessarily look at his points, because 21 points, you're like, that's not the offense you need. That's definitely not your top 6 forward to carry this team to the next level. But he also had 241 hits as a forward, and I'm pretty sure he led all of Washington in hits. Like, the Sabres need that. The Sabres get pushed around constantly. They have been for years and years and years and years, and they have done absolutely nothing to address that situation. So bringing a guy in who, like you mentioned, 93 block shots from a forward is ridiculous. 241 hits from a forward is ridiculous. Like, yes, he's pretty much a defensive forward, but still, I mean, even 21 points, is that a lot? No, but if you can put in 1 or 2 or 3 goals from your fourth line from a guy who's just a straight-up bruiser, but can also play really well defensively forward, like, he's not just an enforcer, right? I think that's the big thing with him, is he's not just there to be that enforcer. He can also be a very solid defensive forward. I think it was like second in the NHL for defensive zone faceoffs. Like, he's out there to do a really good job when your team needs to lock something down, but at the same time, if anything happens on your team, you do have protection, and their fourth line's been a joke for years now of just players who just aren't good. They're just not good enough to play higher up on the team, but they're still your average forwards, so they're just kind of buried on the fourth line. But a fourth line for a team is usually that fourth line, like, they wear down the other team with their physicality, and the Sabres haven't had that for a very long time. So, yes, I heard a lot of, you and I even went back and forth on it a little bit, not that you were against or anything, but people were saying the second-round pick was a little bit high. To me, picks mean absolutely nothing, so I could care less about your bonus second-round pick. Like, sure, did they pay too much, fine. To me, it just doesn't matter. Like, I'd rather have this guy on the team for a second than a second-round pick who might not ever make the team or you won't see in 6 years. So it's the kind of trade that is weird to like so much because he's on the fourth line, but it was something the Sabres desperately needed.
Yeah, and I think the way you put it like that kind of didn't sway me, but it put it more clearly. It's you need now talent. And if you're going to sacrifice the second-round pick, which, down the road could be a really good player, but that's in 4 or 5 years. You need now talent, and this is fixing a part of the team that has been struggling for years and years and years. And this will be the common theme of this show in this segment. I actually like their trade down from 11 to 14 and pick up the fourth round or a second round pick. I thought that was great value. You see the other teams that are making similar trade downs like that, they weren't getting the value that Buffalo did. It was a great trade. I liked the Beck trade for. I liked it. I liked their whole draft that we're going to be talking about right now. And to put in perspective, if this was just a normal team's offseason, I'd be saying Kevin Adams, you're absolutely killing it. Kostas Helenius, right winger, fell to them at 14. A lot of people were thinking he might be, that 10, 11, 12 range, and did they move too far back and not get a guy? Adam Kleber, big right-handed shot defenseman, 6'5". He led the defense in goals and points in the USHL. Brody Zemer, right winger, 71. Luke Osborne, left-handed guy from he was the captain for the U.S. in the Worlds. I think they did a very, very good job without me knowing all the prospects. But from everything that we're seeing, Kevin Adams and his leadership group did a really good job in picking these players where they did. And I commend them for another good draft. That's what Kevin Adams has been known for in this time here, is he drafts very, very well.
But sadly, the problem is that's all he does.
We'll get to there.
But yeah, and I even had that as my main note for you. And you pretty much already handled it. But I think that's the big idea. Like, if you take the 13 years out of it, and which is obviously impossible for a Sabres fan, you can't. It's physically impossible to say, yeah, no, it doesn't matter that we've missed the playoffs 13 straight years. Like, it's there. But if you take that completely out of the equation, we'll say this team recently made it, whatever. They're an expansion team. I don't care. If you look at the roster from that angle, this draft was really good. The team is honestly in a good spot for a team that is not ready to make playoffs. But as a team looking to just the future, and which is beyond frustrating, and it's just so hard to talk about. But to me, this team is just nowhere near ready where they need to be. But if you look down the line, like we've been doing for 13 straight years, I think this team does have a lot of potential to make some noise in the NHL, but not right now. And again, all the moves they made and exactly what you just said are great for a team that is looking to get over that push, that needs just that little bit, that like you're building up your fourth line, which is what a lot of top teams do. They build up, like they have everything else established, like, oh, let's add a better fourth line and these great young prospects, and all of it looks really, really good for a team that hasn't missed the playoffs for 13 straight seasons.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I absolutely love their draft. I love
their top three. I mean, because I didn't go into it too much. Sorry. Their top three, fantastic. Helenius, however you say it. Like you mentioned, wasn't supposed to fall, really. All the mocks I had or saw before anything happened had him going to Philly, one after Buffalo's original pick, and he fell. A couple more. Everybody loved that. Kleber, exactly you said, huge defenseman, and the biggest thing with him, right-handed defenseman, yep. Something they do not have anything of in the pipeline, which was fantastic. Zimmer and Osborne, both like them a lot. Their top four picks right there. I mean, after that, not that they're bad picks. It just gets dicey in general with the NHL draft. I do think their top four picks were really, really good, though. Especially the top two. I think those are just exactly what the Sabres need moving forward, and those were just pretty much home run picks to me.
Yeah, so then we flash forward. Free agency opened on Monday. They need to trim the season down and make it so this offseason longer, so not all this. The Stanley Cup was crowned on Monday. Right? Draft was Friday and Saturday, and free agency was Monday again. It's nuts. But, again, I liked what they did in free agency. I was a little worried what Kevin Adams was going to do if he was going to hand out a monster contract that was going to come back to bite them because his job's in jeopardy. But Jason Zucker, 1 year, $5 million. I don't give two farts that it's $5 million. If he was valued at 3.3, this is the Buffalo Sabres. You're going to have to pay a bit more to get players to come here. He's a second to third line player. I would love him more on the third line, but he's depth scoring, something that this team did not have the last couple of years. Sam Lafferty is a center. He's going to be a fourth line center here. 29 years old, 2 years, $2 million a year. He's a defensive, hard to play against centerman who's going to play on your fourth line. Abel Kubel. He came from Washington. Basically, Buffalo is building Washington's fourth line here. 1 year, $1.5 million. Again, 159 hits, 32 takeaways. You know, he's got Stanley Cup winning experience with Colorado. I think what Kevin Adams has done in free agency so far, yes, it's July 3rd, but free agency is 80% done already. Then they brought Jacob Bryson back. Dennis Gilbert, who's a hometown guy. One of those two guys is probably the seventh man. The other one's probably going to be waived and sent down to Rochester. They filled out their minor league team with James Reimer. He's probably going to be their third insurance goaltender. That Eric Comrie, but going to be trying to squeeze him down to Rochester and be that one guy there. So Rochester is looking good. I think as the team stands now, I like all the moves Kevin Adams has done. 100%. No question about it. Well, like you said perfectly, if you take out the 13 years, I absolutely love everything Kevin Adams has done so far. And this is the problem. This is where it gets dicey. You have all these prospects, and I get it. It's July 3rd. They don't start real meaningful hockey games until October. So I reserve the right to change this if something comes down the pipeline. But from his press conference on Monday after free agency opens, where him saying that he legit said if a player is unsure about coming to Buffalo, he moves on and doesn't think twice. That's a crap argument and a crap logic for a GM. Your job is to convince players that Buffalo is a good place to come. I love all the speed and toughness they've added. I love the makeup of this team so far. But you need a top 3 winger. Because if you do that, you push Peterka down, you push Benson down, and you push Zucker down. If you do and you go add a top 3 winger, which you're missing on this team, you will have a perfect offseason. And I get that it can still happen. But there has been nothing that gives me any confidence that this GM will go do that. He is too afraid to make a big move and make a mistake. It's easy to tear it down. The Jack Eichel trade was easy. The Sam Reinhart deal was easy. Ristolainen was an easy deal. It's easy to tear a team down. It's tough to build it back up, and he's too afraid to trade one of these valuable prospects that might turn into something good. It's been 13 years. Go get a top player. And everybody's saying, hey, but no player wants to come play here in Buffalo. There are players that don't have an option. There are players out there that don't have trade movement clauses. You can go get one, and they won't have an option. They won't have a choice to come here. They will be forced to come here. Kevin Adams, maybe when this is all said and done, maybe Twitter has already broken news that something has happened in this recording. Maybe when the time comes and this comes out, Kevin Adams has already made a trade. But there's nothing in me that gives me any confidence Kevin Adams is going to go out and make a big move like this because he's never done it. He's never done it. He's too afraid to do it. And guess what? That might end up costing Kevin Adams his job. That prospect pool and that draft that you just have, that next GM that's going to be for the Buffalo Sabres is absolutely going to love it. The Kevin Adams, you did a great job building up the prospect pool. Guess what? You didn't do enough job for the franchise that you run right now, the Buffalo Sabres. You did not do enough to push them over the top.
Yeah, I mean that I love everything they've done. Like you said, that fourth line with the 192 hits, 159 hits, and 222 hits, like that's going to be ridiculous. Like I'm actually like. As depressing as it is, that might be the most excited I get about a Sabres hockey game is when that fourth line comes out. I'm like, all right, let's watch them hit someone. That'll be fun. But as far as this team goes, like you said, I mean, another big thing that I saw and read, which we can depressingly talk about this as well, Skinner's gone. Buyout is brutal, and we don't agree with buyouts pretty much ever in especially the NHL when it's spread out like it is. But the big thing with the buyout is if you don't use that money, what did you buy him out for? So he has to do something. Like if you sit and do nothing the rest of this offseason and you bought a player out to give that extra cap space and you do absolutely nothing with it, why did you buy out Skinner? Why did you get rid of a top 6 forward to bring nobody extra in for no reason to then just you're paying a guy to not be on the team and you didn't use the cap space for anything? Like even with the 10-year deals that they have, I think they said they'd still have about 11 million-ish, not knowing what those deals are going to look like, in salary cap space. And a lot of that is coming from the Skinner buyout. And if you just don't do anything with that money and you go into the new season without Skinner and with all this cap space and you don't do anything with it, why the heck did you buy him out for no reason other than to lose a productive top 6 forward that you are now desperately missing? Like, that will be brutal, and I don't know how you would answer that. I don't know how you would possibly answer for the fact that you got rid of a top 6 forward, did not replace him, and then have all this extra cap space for absolutely no reason. That you're still paying a player who's no longer on the team who could have given you top 6 production. Like, I don't know how you explain that away if they go into the season with this team.
Yeah, and on top of that, because the other point that we made about the possible buyout is giving one of these guys in Rochester a shot. There's no room now. Like, you filled out the bottom 6. There's no room. You're not going to bring.
There's no room for like unless you like that jump would be insane. You can't expect any of them to be a top 3, top 6 forward.
Right, and that's why I'm pounding the table. Like, I'm begging. Like, go make a deal. Bring in Nicholas Ehlers. Go bring in. I know you're a big Zegras guy. Go bring in a guy that doesn't have a no trade movement clause and doesn't have a say if he comes to Buffalo or not. There's plenty of guys out there. There's Chris Auslander, Chad DeDominicis, a lot of these people who are great content creators for the Buffalo Sabres that do so much more detailed analysis than we will ever do. Like, that's their thing. We're Buffalo Bandits, they're Buffalo Sabres, and they do a hell of a job. They even brought up, that's only like there's so many players out there that don't have trade movement clauses yet that could be options for the Buffalo Sabres. Just, Kevin, I'm begging you. Like, I am telling you that you've had an unbelievable offseason so far. I've loved all the moves you do. You haven't hit the number one priority of bringing in a top 3 winger so you can push all these other wingers down. Like, Benson should not be a second-line winger right now. I love Peterka, but I want him on that kid line. Zucker, like, they should push all these guys down. And yes, you need a third-line center. Maybe Krebs can be it, but the number one priority right now is to bring in a young winger to pair with Tage and Tuck, and just, you have the ammo to do it. You have one of the best pipelines in the NHL. You built it up. It's beautiful down there, but it's not going to help the National Hockey League's team, the Buffalo Sabres, right now by just letting them cook down there. But again, I love the draft. I love the trades. I love the moves you made in free agency. You didn't commit too much money on long-term deals, and stupid season that free agency is. But you haven't done the number one thing that you need to do this offseason, and that's bring in more top-tier talent to this team. And until you do that, obviously until you do that, this offseason is a failure. As much as I love it, it's a failure if you don't bring in a top-tier talent.
And who knows if it's, GM speak, which it might partially be, but I also don't know if he's smart enough to be saying stuff like that. But the amount of quotes he's had of, like, loving the roster, happy with it, thrilled with it, really excited about our offseason. We did fantastic going into the season, and I'm really excited about the roster.
13 years, Kevin. Nobody wants to hear it.
Like, no, this roster cannot do it. Like, this roster, again, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, sure, probably looks okay. Right now, this roster is not a playoff team. It isn't. Unless you're, again, which we already saw did not work last year, you're expecting the entire team to once again step up. And you're expecting all these players to take all these massive leaps forward, and that's just how it's going to work. Like, everyone's going to take a step forward. We're going to become one of the best offensive teams again with a defensive-minded coach, and it's just magically going to fall into place, just like it did last year, and it worked so well for this team. I can't believe the amount. Like, why can't you just be honest and say we need a top 6 winger? or a top 3 win. Like, why is that so complicated to be like, no, our team's not ready? Like, yeah, they're okay, and we could probably win some games and we could be competitive, and like you can say that you don't hate the team, but also accept and admit that there's holes on this team right now, and a massive one is a top line winger, and this team is missing. And like you said, if you get that and push all these other players down the roster, all of it gets better. One player essentially makes this entire team better, and it's not just the production they're bringing, it's shifting all these players that shouldn't be a line up down to, going against defensive pairing number 2, defensive pairing number 3. Like, it helps all these other players on the team that aren't ready to make that jump, which he magically thinks they are, which he did last year, and everybody fell flat on their faces. So even that one player's production, like, yeah, you want a guy who can get a lot of points, but it also just helps your entire roster the whole way through. And if he just goes into the season with extra cap space and this exact roster, like you said, like, everything you've done is just a failure. Like, it's not good enough. Like, all these moves are great for a team that's made playoffs recently or is like looking for that extra little bit of grit to get them through playoffs. Like, for the Sabres, all of these moves are fantastic if you get a top line winger. Right now, it's not enough to get them back.
Yeah, so again, it's July 3rd. There's 2-3
right.
full
There's
months
time.
to be able to
Just his comments worry the hell out of me. But I will try to give him time, and I guess we'll see what he comes up with before the season.
Yeah, I'm going on the assumption it's not going to happen, and if it
Agreed.
does, I will ask for forgiveness and apologize to Kevin Adams that he did a good job. But again, sitting here right now, based on the quotes and track record, he ain't doing nothing. But Phil, about close to an hour 12 in, long episode, but we had a lot to cover here. I think next week could be a shorter one. We'll see. We always say that. But is there anything else you would like to add to this show before we shut it down until next Wednesday?
It's a good thing that we have time breakdowns in the description of the show.
Very much so. But once again, congratulations to Cam and Cindy. Can't wait to celebrate with you on Saturday. Your love is a beautiful thing, Phil. Love is a beautiful thing. But yeah, on our next show, we'll talk about the Toronto Rock and the Albany Firewolves. We'll hand out report cards for them. We'll possibly talk about some more Sabres news. Maybe more moves will be made. There's been a lot more signings that we didn't talk about because they're so minimal. But, there's other content creators that talk about those. They also talk about the draft picks further in depth than we did. We just like to give our opinions on it without any basing it on prior research on the draft picks. But, Toronto and Albany enter the classroom next week. And don't forget, we got the transcript on Apple. So if you want to read the show and read our tangent, you have to say it in the same passion that we did. But thank you all for listening to another episode of the Buffalo Sports Collective. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Buffalo Sports Collective, and on X and Blue Sky at Buffalo Sports Co. Visit our website at buffalosportscollective.com. Check out our store on our link tree or on our socials on the shop tab at the top of the website. Follow our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. And for everybody out there, make sure you leave us that special review on Apple and Spotify, because we desperately need them. More 5 stars. We're trying to reach 20 on Spotify. But until next time, bye-bye.